In a sun-scorched African village, where round mud huts with grass roofs stood close together and the cries of goats and chickens filled the air, a poor widow lived with her two small sons in a life of sorrow and want. Her husband, once the strength of their home, had died suddenly, leaving behind heavy debts she could not repay. And now the creditors prowled like jackals, threatening to take her children away as slaves. Day after day, she sat outside her hut, her head wrapped in a faded scarf, her dress torn and patched, her face lined with worry as she stirred an empty pot over ashes that no longer gave smoke. Her sons, barefoot and thin, tugged at her arms asking, "Mama, what shall we eat?" But she had no answer except silent tears. In her desperation, she walked to the house of Elisha, the prophet of God, a tall elder with dark skin like polished ebony, white hair that glowed in the sun, and a wooden staff carved with tribal markings. Falling to her knees, she begged, "Man of God, help me, for I have nothing left." Elisha's gentle eyes searched her soul as he asked, "What do you have in your house?" She whispered, "Only a small clay jar of oil." Smiling, he told her, "Go, borrow many empty pots from your neighbors. Borrow not a few. Then shut yourself inside your house with your children and pour the oil." Though confused, the widow obeyed, sending her sons running barefoot across the dusty paths of the village, knocking on every hut, pleading, "Please, lend us your pots." The neighbors, curious but kind, handed over clay jars, hollow gourds, and even cracked vessels, until their tiny hut was crowded from corner to corner with empty containers. That night, with trembling hands, the widow lifted her little jar and tilted it over one pot. At first only a drop, then a stream, then a steady flow of golden oil that shimmered in the firelight. Her children gasped in wonder, shouting, "Mama, it is still flowing!" They placed another pot, then another, and the oil poured without ceasing. The hut glowed as though heaven itself had entered, the sweet smell of oil filling the air as pot after pot brimmed to the top. Hours passed, the boys running back and forth with excitement, until at last one cried, "There are no more pots!" And in that instant, the oil stopped. Silence fell as the widow collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed, tears streaming down her cheeks as she gazed at the miracle that surrounded her. Rows upon rows of jars filled with precious oil. With a joyful heart, she ran back to Elisha, who smiled and said, "Go, sell the oil, pay your debts, and live on what remains." The next day, the whole village watched in awe as the widow sold the oil at the marketplace, her debts cleared, her sons safe, and enough left over to feed her family for years. That evening, under the vast African night sky filled with stars, the widow and her children lifted their voices in song, dancing barefoot on the earth, their sorrow turned into laughter, their shame into honor. For the God of heaven had turned a little into abundance, and their story was told from hut to hut as a sign of hope that faith, even in the darkest hour, brings miracles.